Welcome back to Legends in the Making. I'm Erin Sarles Bowers, strategist, mentor, mom, and advocate for raising exceptional human beings in a world that's become obsessed with noise. Today, I want to talk to the parents who feel like they're losing their child, not to failure, but to distraction. Because culture is loud, but your child's inner voice, their truth, their identity, their direction, it's still there. It's just waiting to be heard again. So let's dive right into today's episode. And obviously, I am a parent and I talk to a lot of other parents, and this comes out really frequently. When we talk about generations and culture, and a lot of people think, we have a very lazy generation. And I don't think that our kids are lazy. I don't think they're struggling because they have a lack of ambition. I think they're struggling because they're drowning in external programming. They have so much coming at them all the time that how do you navigate what's true, what's real, and how do I essentially find myself and become myself in a world that's extrapolated in so much noise? It's so different than when I grew up. And my kids always say, "You don't understand." And to a certain element, they're right. Yeah, I might have had friend issues or similar things, but the way in which information, the frequency, the amount um, is very different. I could go home after school, and if I wanted to talk to my friends, somebody was calling me on my landline. Cell phones just started coming out. The World Wide Web had just started to peak and come out. Just very, very different. And, nowadays kids have everything at their fingertips at all times, especially if they have devices. When they go to school, everything's on a computer, and we think that that's cutting edge. But I would just ask, like, is it? Is it really? I find myself as a parent having a hard time navigating all the social media constructs that are out in the world today, let alone what's that like for a younger human being that's just now really stepping into who they're becoming. And I think we are drastically losing our children and ourselves in all the data and information that's out there. I mean, think about it. They can be on YouTube, they have TikTok, there's highlights reels, the gaming industry. I mean, you have free pornography, you have peer pressure. It's nonstop stimulation that replaces self-reflection with self-comparison. I mean, how do you truly discern what's real? And a lot, as we continue to advance, especially with AI, we have even more opportunities to help our children discern what is really true. What is true? Part of our gifts given to us as human beings is that element of discernment. And how do you teach your kids to be able to discern when their world is just consumed with all the things that I just described? And so we have a huge opportunity as parents. Like, how do we lead our kids back to who they truly are supposed to be and meant to be, and helping them tune in to that inner voice? What does it mean to be exceptional? how are you exceptional? What are the things that you do that make you exceptional? And not getting drowned in all the self-comparison that they have, or seeing things and thinking that those things are instantaneous, that they just magically dropped in somebody's lap, not seeing all the hard work that lies behind getting to where that individual says. And I hear from parents all over the place, how moody their children are, how they talk back to them, the way they speak to them, that they're lazy, that they're unmotivated. But really, if you think about those underlying behaviors, what they're really doing is they're just trying to tune the world out. It's almost like they're numb, and they're being conditioned to consume instead of contemplate. They're being conditioned to not have to think. When I think of the school example and everything being done on the computer, and, my son said to me, school is so boring because all we are is on our computers. And it's like there's no lecturing, there's no note taking, there's no engaging in thought activity to build their muscle to be independent thinkers. At the core of our being, we are our soul. We are sovereign. We are here to remember that we are the divine embodied in human form. And are our kids being taught this and reminded of that and cultivated to develop themselves as a emanation of God himself, and as a independent thinker that has a different viewpoint from everybody else? We've also created a society of conditioning where it's like if you have a different thought from somebody else, something's wrong. We have the cancel culture where it's like, I don't believe that, but if I don't go along with this, then nobody's going to like me. I mean, let's start to really peel back the layers and really start to look at what's going on, because we have an obligation. The only way we solve these problems is by looking at them and making a choice of how to rise higher and to do something differently. And so that's really the call when I think of the work that I'm here to do, or through modalities of blueprint to Bluechip or leadership alignment, is helping lead people back to themselves, helping people remember who they truly are, and giving them the tools and resources and power to constantly to come back to that, because we are bombarded with things that are not important. They're not really the truth of who we are. And yet we're going down these rabbit holes. We're creating a culture where our kids think their worth is determined by the amount of money they make. They're chasing money to feel worthy. They're doing things that I just can't even imagine doing in order to make money. We're not teaching kids their true worth. And when they find their true worth, all these things are going to flow to them naturally, because they're not chasing something that doesn't deem worthiness. Whether that's sex, whether that's drugs, whether that's money, all these things that they're chasing, there is an internal lack. And so they think that by getting that, then they're going to feel whole. Well, at the end of the day, until you remember who you are and focus on building who that is, you're always going to be in lack. No amount of money, no amount of drugs that you take, no amount of alcohol you drink, no amount of anything that you choose to do that you think is going to help you achieve that inner state of bliss is going to be enough until you truly remember who you are. And that's the work that we have to do. So you can't lead yourself if you've never been taught how to hear your own inner voice. How do you truly lead yourself when you don't know who you are? So how do we change this? We need to not add any more pressure. It's not about more practice, but it's about how do you get your child, yourself as a parent, really presenced in the now, presence in the remembrance of who we are, presence in knowing that in the hardest moments, that if I remember who I am, everything will resolve itself accordingly. So inside Blueprint to Bluechip, we teach stillness. We teach journaling. We teach breath work. We have guided reflections. And guess what? These aren't soft skills. These are actually the survival necessary skills that we all need as human beings in order to navigate this world and start to cancel out the noise, as well as to start to return ourselves to our true state of being. Just think about that. These are the skills that people need. We think we need all these hard skills in order to survive, but really we need the skills to come into alignment with who we are so that we then go act in the world accordingly. You know, when I think of using these techniques, whether with athletes or CEOs or senior executives, they learn that being able to come into yourself actually creates your edge. You're actually at a place where you can make the most poised decisions because you're the most aligned. And you also start to hear yourself so that you can then lead yourself. There's a quote in the Course in Miracles, and it goes something, I might butcher this, but the essence is the ego speaks first and the ego speaks loudest. So how do you start to quiet and come into a place where you can actually hear what you truly are meant to hear, so that you can then go accomplish the desires that God has planted in your heart? You know, the desires that you have as an athlete, as a parent, for yourself, for your children, whomever, those were planted in your heart by God as an indicator of what He wants to give you. But can you live in alignment in order to achieve that? And that means quieting all the noise that's out there and around you. And I will tell you this, once your child hears themselves again, once they learn this technique to truly hear themselves, to really know who they are, you don't have to motivate them. They start to move with purpose because they are connected to the essence of who they truly are. And how powerful is that? How powerful is that to allow your child to come into alignment with the essence of who they are and start to have the tools and resources to listen to that and then act from that state of being? So when I think about the universal law of mentalism, all is mind and everything is created through that. So basically, every thought that you think has a ripple effect, has to essentially be brought to be reflected in the 3D world. So if we're thinking negative thoughts and then we look at our world around us, ultimately what we get is back is what we're thinking. So when we train our minds, but we do that through heart-based consciousness of really understanding my mind is just the translator of the divine to my heart. It's just an intermediate that's the translator. Because one thing I spend a lot of time unpacking with clients, with athletes, is that we are not our thoughts. But we also have to understand if we are having those thoughts, where are they coming from? What's that underlying belief system? And then how do we requalify those thoughts and beliefs to the truth of what really is going on? And understanding that we don't need to be in denial of anything. That's the other fundamental issue we really have that pervades society, is that any thought, pardon me, that we think that has some negative emotion attached to it is wrong. And it's like, no, our emotions are our internal compass, our GPS system that are helping us understand and point to where we're out of alignment. When we have a negative emotion, it's because we're not aligned with the truth of who we are. And so understanding that emotion and what's the underlying belief, and then what should I learn from that and love that part of me, I can then requalify that emotion and step back into myself. But we've also created a culture of just denial, of just be happy. And it's like, if those are running underneath the surface, they're still affecting you. And you're going to still be given situations over and over and over again until you want to look at them. That's how the universe works. So ultimately, you have to constantly be requalifying what you're thinking. So when you are having thoughts, it's getting very curious with them and understanding what beliefs need to be brought to the surface to really bring you back to the truth of who you are. As well as when you think about all is mind and everything is created from that, as you become more still and you work on your practices, life starts to shift and slow down, because you're not getting trapped in every thought that the ego thinks that we have to go act on. So there's so many beautiful lessons and so many beautiful habits you can build by just coming into a state of stillness and self-awareness. So I want to leave you with one simple question today. When is the last time you or your child sat in silence and felt safe in it? So let me say that again. When is the last time you or your child sat in silence and felt safe in it? If this episode resonates with you and you're ready to help your athlete quiet the noise, reconnect to their inner compass, and lead from the inside out, DM me Inner Voice on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you find me. And I will send you the tool that we get every family started off when they come into our program. And I would just help you realign with yourself, with your family, with your child, so that you can live the most fulfilled life possible and achieve the desires that are planted in your heart. This chaotic world, culture doesn't have the final word. Your soul does.